we all know, that we'll all know from our regular use, that is neem, that is Azadirachta indica. Normally we use it for our skincare properties, like if somebody has some skin problem like acne or something, they use it normally, neem. We use aloe vera. Okay, so aloe, the scientific name of aloe is aloe vera only. So we use it for skincare also. You use it for internal medicine also. Okay, so that is aloe vera. We definitely know tulsi. Okay, Ocimum sanctum. There are several species of tulsi present in our surroundings, but Ocimum sanctum is the most common one, and we all have tulsi in our home. So besides its medicinal properties, like it helps us in cold and cough and thing, so it purifies the air. So in our home there is a tulsi plant in everyone's home, and in our lab we have the culture of Swayzia chirata, Hoppia fastigiata, Melissa officinalis, and several others like Plectranthus, which is a member of Lamiaceae, and several other for which we don't still now we don't have culture, like Ekangi, Culantro, Patroli, Hemidesmus, but they all are used for their medicinal properties. So what makes them different from the others, like they are used as medicinal plant. Okay, so what are the characteristics that make them medicinally more important? So we can say that these are the plants which are medicinally more important than the plant which is beside it. So for antioxidant properties, yes, antioxidant properties we can of course definitely say, but we in case of not only in case of antioxidant properties, but in case of other properties like anticholinergic property, like some other that I have told, that skin care properties, common illnesses like injuries, endemic infectious, mental or oral health, and several food and nutritious things. So for cooking also we use different spices like tejpat, dalchini, that is cinnamon. So they also have some medicinal properties. That's why we are using it in our in our regular life. Okay. So till now, do you have any question? Hello.
No, ma'am, but the names you told just now were not clear. But then also okay.
Okay, you know tej pata, right? We normally use in our home for cooking.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
I
so
know.
that tej pata, besides its spice property, it has some medicinal property also. That's why ancient from our ancient literature and from our ancient culture, we are using it in our regular life. Okay, that's what I'm telling. And the scientific name, if you want me to write it down, I will put it in in the PPT. I will be sharing with you, and that will be there. So, are you talking about the scientific names that I was talking?
No, ma'am, will you tell us once more the medicinal properties of Tejpata?
Okay, so as I have told that antioxidant is always there, it has some antibacterial, antifungal, antipyretic, anticholinergic property. So, is it clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So now I will be talking about the today's topic. Okay. So today our topic, as I have told, that is determining DPPH free radical scavenging activity of Canskora diffuser root extract. So first, let me share with you my slide. Is it visible to you guys?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am, it is visible.
Okay. So first we will talk about this ROS, that is what is reactive oxygen species. Okay, then we will talk about what is antioxidant, what are the different types of antioxidant, that is their type of antioxidant based on their properties or based on their measure of work. Okay, Then we will talk about this Canskora diffusa, this particular plant, that why we are mostly interested in this plant, what is the special characteristic this plant possesses, so we are interested in this one. And finally, we will talk about this particular DPPH thing. What is DPPH, or what kind of chemical structure it possesses, so that we are interested in free radical scavenging of this particular thing, and why we are using the root extract of this Canskora diffusa plant. Okay. So first we will know a little bit about reactive oxygen species. So as we all know that reactive oxygen species, commonly known as ROS, they are the reactive free radicals that contain the.
Can you not go to full screen mode?
Sir, it was in full screen only. Now is it visible in full screen mode?
No. That is okay. Okay, you can't see.
Sir, is it now in? I am doing it full screen mode only.
No, ma'am, slideshow is not showing.
No, it is left side. It is showing the slide.
Okay, but in my computer it is in slideshow mode only.
Yeah, this sometimes creates problem, but as long as it is visible, you go ahead. Yeah,
Okay.
You can increase the size slightly. Yeah, required. Otherwise, fine.
Okay. Are the slides visible?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am. Yeah, okay. So these reactive oxygen species are the reactive free radicals that contain the oxygen atom. So basically, these oxygen atoms are highly reactive because they contain unpaired, that is lone pair electron. Okay. And now, if these lone pair electron containing oxygen atoms, if they are present in high concentration in our cell, it will be highly toxic to our cell. So that's why they are of main concern, because it will be highly reactive because it will try to lose its electron, and it will try to become in a stable state. It will try to be in a stable state. So what it will do, it will react with some cellular molecules like proteins or lipids or carbohydrates, and it will denature them. It will gain or lose its electron from it, and it will itself become stable, and as a result vital cellular structure and function will be lost. So that's why it is of our concern that the reactive oxygen species should not be very much present in our cell. And it is not like that only the exogenous factors are responsible for the generation of this reactive oxygen species. So like normal metabolic function that is happening inside our cell or inside our body, it is also giving rise to some reactive oxygen species that are called free radicals. Okay. So now we will see what are different types of reactive oxygen species. So here it is the molecular structure of oxygen. So here we can see that two molecules of oxygen, the two atoms of oxygen are present in the molecule, and in the one single electron is present in the outer shell of this oxygen atom. Okay. So that's why this oxygen molecule becomes more prone, becomes more susceptible for gaining one lone pair electron from outside. That is why this reactive this reactive species is morely containing oxygen. Okay. So this is the structure of superoxide anion. Here it is the lone pair electron present here. This is peroxide. It is hydroxyl ion. This is the most dangerous, but it cannot travel more far. Okay. This is the most dangerous one. And this is hydroxyl radical, and this is hydrogen peroxide. So these are the different types of ROS that is present. So now we will know what are the how these ROS are produced. Okay. So several exogenous factors like ionizing radiation or smoking or air pollution or UV light can give rise to reactive oxygen species in our cell or in our body. And in case of different cellular metabolism like photosynthetic electron transport system that happens in plant inside chloroplast, or in respiratory electron transport system that happens in mitochondria, that happens in both plant as well as in animals, that give rise to this reactive oxygen species. Okay, so these are the cause, that is, these are the internal factors which generates reactive oxygen species inside our body, and these are the external factors that generates reactive oxygen species inside our body. Now we will come to know about antioxidants. So what are antioxidants? As the name suggests, that they will just stabilize the free radical, that is the unstable molecule, and they will not let the unstable molecule hamper our normal cellular activity. Okay, so this is the stable molecule, this is the free radical, that is unstable molecule. It wants to take one electron from it so that it can be stable, as it has one unpaired electron. Okay, so this one is unstable and this one is stable. It tries to attack this one. What antioxidant will do? Antioxidant will share one of its electron with it so that this one will be stable, this one will not be unstable anymore, and so it will not attack this stable molecule anymore. So this is the role of antioxidant. Okay, so these antioxidants are capable of stabilizing or deactivating free radicals before they attack the cellular components. So here this image is showing this work only. Okay, so these antioxidant can be of different type. Okay, so based on their activity, we can based on their mechanism, like how they are working, these antioxidant can be of different type. Like they can be scavenging type, that scavenging the species that initiate peroxidation, quenching singlet oxygen. They can be of chelating metals. They can break the free radical chain reaction, that is the chain breaking type. They can reduce the concentration of oxygen by reducing the energy of free radicals, or by giving up some of their electron for its use. Like here this antioxidant is sharing its electron with this free radical so that this free radical becomes stable. Okay, so these are the type of antioxidant based on their mechanism of work. Okay, so antioxidant can protect us from aging, from degenerative diseases such as cardiovascular disease, cataract-genesis disease, etc. Okay. Is it clear up to this class? Hello. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So should I move on?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now we will talk about like what types of antioxidants. Okay. So first we talked about what are antioxidants. Then we talked about types of antioxidant based on their mechanism. So now we will talk about antioxidant based on their type, like non-enzymatic or enzymatic, based on their character. Okay. So antioxidant can be of two types, that is non-enzymatic one and enzymatic one. So first we will be talking about this enzymatic one. So under this enzymatic one, there are of two types, that is the direct and this is indirect or ancillary. Okay. So for direct, there are three types, that is the SOD, that is superoxide dismutase catalase, and this one is glutathione peroxidase. Okay. So you people try to remember the full form of this, and if not, you can ask me after the class. Because maybe in exam you will be asked this type of question. Okay, so the full form of SOD is superoxide dismutase, and this GSHPS, that is glutathione peroxidase. Okay, so this superoxide dismutase, this is the preventive type of antioxidant enzyme. So it prevents the so it prevents the reactive oxygen species forming the H2O2, and this catalase and peroxidase, these two are scavenging type of antioxidants. So the hydrogen peroxide, that is H2O2, formed by this superoxide dismutase, it is further broken down into water and oxygen by this catalase and peroxidase. You people have gone through this catalase and peroxidase class before, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So I hope this is familiar to you, that catalase and peroxidase, they break down the hydrogen peroxide, which is also another type of reactive oxygen species. So they are of scavenging type. So they basically break the chain. That is, they are the chain breaking type. They are the scavenging type. And this SOD, this is basically the preventing type. So this forms the hydrogen peroxide. Okay. And now coming to this indirect path, indirect enzymatic antioxidant, that is this GSH S transferase, which is glutathione S transferase, UDP glucuronyl transferase, that is uridine diphosphate glucuronyl transferase, GSSG reductase, that is glutathione disulfide reductase, and so on. Okay. Now I am coming to this non-enzymatic antioxidant, which comprises of low molecular weight antioxidants. Sorry. Low molecular weight antioxidants and polypeptides, metal binding proteins, and minerals. First, coming to these low molecular weight antioxidants. These are of two types, that is dietary or exogenous. This means that we can have it from outside sources also. Okay. And endogenous, that means which is present inside our body. So this dietary or exogenous contains both two types, that is lipophilic or hydrophilic. Lipophilic means these are soluble in lipids. Okay. So this contains vitamin A, vitamin E or tocopherol, carotenoids, omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. Okay. So all these are lipophilic. That means they are dissolved, they can be dissolved in lipids only. Okay. And hydrophilic means they can be dissolved in water. Hydro means water. Okay. So this contains vitamin C or ascorbic acid and polyphenols. So these are of dietary or exogenous type. That means we can have it from outside. From advertisement, we see that this particular oil contains omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acid, and this thing contains, Horlicks contains vitamin A, DHA, something. So these are like this. Okay. And other one is endogenous. So what is present inside our body. Okay. So this is also divided into two types, that is lipophilic, soluble in fat, lipoic acid, ubiquinone, and plasmalogen. Okay. And hydrophilic, that is uric acid, glutathione, and conjugated bilirubin, etc. Now I am coming to these other things, that is polypeptides, metal binding proteins, and minerals. So under polypeptides, there are thyrodoxine, glutaredoxine, and sulfaredoxine. The metal binding protein are albumin, celluloplasmin, and metallothionein. And for minerals, these are zinc, copper, selenium, and manganese. These minerals are required for the action of this enzymatic antioxidant. That is, for SOD, three types of SOD are present inside us. Okay. This manganese, SOD, which needs manganese for its activity, that is present inside our mitochondria. Okay. So that manganese containing SOD, or the SOD which needs manganese for its activity, is present inside our mitochondria. And the SOD which needs zinc or copper for its activity, that is present inside our cytosol. Okay. And this selenium is needed for the activity of this glutathione peroxidase. Okay. Is it clear up to you? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any question?
Okay.
No, ma'am.
Okay. So now we will know a little bit about this plant. So this one, in the first class, you have gone through this tissue culture techniques. So this is the in vitro grown plant. So this is the plant grown inside the culture tube, and this is the plant which is grown in the field. So this is the plant Canscora diffusa. This plant belongs to the family Zienkieneaceae. So this has some medicinal value. So this plant has, as we said, that it, of course, it has antioxidant properties. Besides that, it has some other anticholinergic and aphrodisiac properties also. Okay, but the main thing or the main compound that is present inside the plant, which is responsible for the medicinal activity of this plant, is this polyphenol that comes under this dietary or exogenous antioxidant, and which is hydrophilic in nature. Okay, so this polyphenol is present in this plant, and a group of polyphenol, namely xanthone, that is the type of polyphenol that is present inside this plant, and the whole plant accumulates xanthone, but the root of this plant contains the most amount of xanthone. So further, after growing this in vitro plantlet, we have gone for this adventitious root culture. So in this culture, only the root of this plant, only the root part of this plant has been grown in our tissue culture lab, so that because the root contains the most amount of antioxidant, so our interest was in root part of this plant only. So we have developed this adventitious root culture of this Canscora diffusa plant. Okay, so xanthone accumulated in this plant mainly in roots known to have strong antioxidant activity along with other major activities. Okay. So now we will know about DPPH, that is 2,2-diphenyl 1-picaryl hydrazine. You need to remember these full forms because this thing will be asked. Yeah. Any
Was this
question?
medicinal value was present in vitro root culture? Can you go to the previous slide?
Yeah. Yes.
The plant you grown in the lab, in that plant, that medicinal value was present. Means in vitro grown.
Yes, it was present, and that is the practical, or
That
that
was
is
only
the result.
polyphenols, no ma'am?
No, see, this is the root. It contains most amount of polyphenols. The root part of this plant contains most amount of, that is xanthone or polyphenol inside it. Okay, the whole plant contains polyphenol, but the root contains maximum.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And your question is that whether this field root grown inside our lab without the plant and the root grown outside with the plant showed similar type of activity or not? Was it your question?
Yeah, ma'am, I was on the same point.
Yeah. So actually, the activity of this was more. Okay, because if the plant is growing the whole the whole aerial part and the root part, then some energy is going through this also, right? Some metabolites are going through this for this part also, for making these leaves, for making these flowers, right? Here only the root is growing. We are giving plant such minerals or such whatever is needed for the growth of root only. So whatever the plant is using or whatever the plant is producing is for the root only, is for the growth of root only. So definitely, if 100 is suppose 100 is needed, so here maybe 50 is going for the shoot part and 50 is going for the root part. Here 100 is in root part. So what will happen? The root will have more this antioxidant activity, right?
But ma'am, if we are providing the all favorable condition to the root, I think it will transport to the all parts of the plant as per the photosynthesis process.
I couldn't understand your question.
Means, ma'am, we are giving the all favorable condition to the root. Does it will not transport to the all parts of the plant as per the photosynthesis process?
Yeah, okay.
No.
Sulagna, I answered to the student's question.
Yeah.
Look, what Sulagna said, that we have established the root culture. That means when you see the whole plant, it contains the leaf, shoot, and the root. So what we have done, so we cut the root and put it in the culture, and we add appropriate hormones so that the root only grow, but the leaf and stem will not grow. Okay, and then once it started growing that, then we will cut a small piece of that root, putting it another fresh medium with the same hormone combination, so it grows. So here, whatever you add in the culture, whatever minerals, nutrients add in the culture, that will be absorbed by the root, but it will not go to the aerial part because there is no shoot and leaf here. So it is made in that way. So everything will be retained there and utilized. That is, I think that's your question, right?
Okay, thank you, sir. Got it, sir.
But if you have the whole, like the middle photograph where you see both the root and shoots are there. So there, if you add any nutrient, so that will be taken up by the root and it will go throughout the plant part. Okay, but the last figure, the right side one, so it is a specialized root culture. So here it will retain only in the root. Okay, Sulagna, go ahead.
Okay. So DPPH, so it is a dark purple color crystalline powder containing this stable free radical. Okay, so this is the DPPH bottle, and after you dissolve it in ethanol or any organic solvent, we mostly use it, dissolve it in ethanol or methanol. This is the color of this salt. This is the color of this solution. Okay, so this method, this DPPH scavenging method, is based on the reduction of DPPH, so that this solution, after making this solution, so this color will be reduced and in presence of a hydrogen donating antioxidant. Okay, so due to this reaction, this DPPH, that is this 2,2-diphenyl 1-picril hydrazine, becomes 2,2-diphenyl 1-picril hydrazine. Okay, so this is 2,2-phenyl 1-picril hydrazine. Here it becomes hydrazine, and the color also changes from violet to yellow. So this here we monitor this change only. Okay, so this transformation of color, this transformation results in color change from purple to yellow, and this is measured spectrophotometrically. Okay, so reduction of DPPH results in decrease in absorption. So first we take the OD of this solution at 517 nanometer. Okay, then I will tell how we prepare the total reaction mixture, and we incubate it in dark. So we cannot keep this solution in light, because then it will be reduced in light only. So if we have to keep it in dark, I will tell you the reaction mixture, and then we keep it in dark for 30 minutes for the incubation. And after the 30-minute incubation, we again we take the OD at 517 nanometer, and as the color changes from purple to yellow, the OD decreases. So the OD here, whatever it is, it will be decreased when it comes to yellow color. And this change at 517 nanometer, this absorbance change at 517 nanometer has been used as a measure of antioxidant activity. Okay, so first I will say that this is the root that we have taken. So first it was taken up from the culture, it was then weighed, and it was crushed using mortar and pestle, and this is the image of liquid nitrogen. So it was crushed in with help of liquid nitrogen into powder using mortar and pestle. Then it was collected in a Eppendorf tube, and it was extracted in methanol. Okay, then it was centrifuged in the centrifugation. Then it was centrifuged at 10,000 RPM for 10 minutes, and the supernatant was collected. Okay, so that supernatant will be our working solution for checking the antioxidant activity of this particular root. Okay, so 500 microgram of this root was taken, and the extraction volume of methanol, it was 1 ml. So the concentration of this, finally the concentration of this test solution was 500 microgram per ml, or 0.5 mg per ml. After that, the supernatant was taken for this DPPH DPPH scavenging activity. So for that, 3 concentrations were taken. So 1 microliter, 5 microliter, and 10 microliter of sample was taken in 3 different Eppendorf tubes, and each reaction was done in duplicates. So for 1 microliter, 2 reactions were done, and so on. Okay, so for 1 microliter reaction, 1 microliter of plant extract was taken. As the extraction solvent here was methanol, then 99 microliter of methanol was added to the Eppendorf tube and 900 microliter of DPPH was added to the tube. So finally the volume was 1 ml and the color will be like this. After mixing the DPPH, the color will be like this. As for 5 microliter and 10 microliter, the amount of extraction solvent, that is methanol, will be 95 and 90 microliter, and the amount of DPPH will be same. And for these, all these three, at the time of mixing, the color will be like this. And after that, we will be incubating it at dark for 30 minutes. Okay. So first, after making the DPPH, the OD of the control DPPH was taken. That is, after making the DPPH, before adding all these plant extract or this extraction solvent methanol, the OD of this DPPH was taken at control situation. And after mixing all these and incubating for 30 minutes at dark, finally, when we will let it out from the dark, the color will be like this, and this absorbance will be again taken at 517 nanometer. So this is the result. So this is the control OD. So before adding we plant extract or the extraction solvent, so the control OD was 0.946. As I have told that all the treatments were done in duplicates, so the treatment with extracts were like this. So these were this is for 1 microliter, this is for 5 microliter, and this is for 10 microliter plant extract. So after that, we have gone for the average. So for these two, this is the average. And for inhibition, for calculating the inhibition, first control minus treated divided by control will be the expression of inhibition, and percentage inhibition, it will be just multiplied with 100, and then the concentration, that is mu g per ml, will be calculated. So as the concentration of this parent solution, that is the test solution, was 0.5 mg per ml. So if we take 1 microliter from that, so the concentration of that solution will be 0.05 microgram per ml. Okay. So like that wise, for 10 microliter solution, it was 0.25 microgram per ml, and for 5 microliter, and for 10 microliter solution, it was 0.5 microgram per ml. So like this, we have calculated the percentage of inhibition for 3 different concentration. For DPPH calculation, 3 different concentration are needed for plotting a graph. Okay. So now the calculation part comes. So here, this is on y-axis, this is the percentage of inhibition, and on x-axis, this is the concentration. That is the that 1 microliter, 5 microliter, and 10 microliter solution. What was the concentration of plant, that root that was present inside that reaction mixture? Okay, so it was plotted, and this was the equation we got from here. So after that, we will put 50 in place of y, and we will calculate x. Now I will explain why we will put 50 in place of y and we will calculate x. Okay. So this is called IC50 value. Okay. This is IC50 value. It is the quantitative measure that indicates that how much of a particular inhibitory substance is needed for inhibiting a particular reaction by 50%. Okay. So here we will put 50 in place of y and we will calculate x, and here the IC50 value is 1.48 microgram. So 1.48 microgram of this root extract from this particular test solution, that is 0.5 mg per ml, is needed for showing 50% of inhibition of this experiment. So as we know that the concentration of the test solution was 0.5 mg per ml. So for getting 1.48 microgram, what amount of solution we need to take? Can anybody tell? Hello. Hello. Yes, am I audible to class?
Yes, ma'am.
You are audible.
Okay. So I have told you that the concentration, that is the main solution, main test solution, the concentration of that was 0.5 mg per ml. Okay. And here we got the IC50 value 1.48 microgram. So for getting this concentration, what is the volume of the sample we have to take from this test solution? Nobody knows. Okay, so can I come back to this one? So here, this is the concentration for 1 microliter, right? Hello?
You continue. You are
Okay,
not
sir,
responding.
it is done only. So actually it will be, the answer is 2.96 microliter we have to take from the test solution, so that we can get this 50% inhibition from this. Okay. So this was the quantitative way from how spectrophotometrically we can use DPPH for measuring the antioxidant activity. Okay. So, and this is the TLC bioautoradiography. So here we have used DPPH as the qualitative tool to check the antioxidant activity. So basically here, this is the TLC plate. These are the oils obtained from Tejpata leaves. The Tejpata leaves were dried by different techniques. So these are the oils, and these oils were run on this TLC plate. And after running these on the TLC plate, the plate was then sprayed with DPPH, and we can see that the whole plate has taken the normal color of DPPH, that is the purple color. But where the oil has where the oil has been placed in the plate, there only the yellow color, that is the reduced color of DPPH, is showing. That means that the oil that is present here and that was run on this TLC plate has some antioxidant effect. That is why that DPPH was reduced here, and it is showing, instead of purple color, it is showing yellow color. So this technique is called TLC bioautoradiography. Okay. So I am ending my class. Thank you. If anybody have any question, please feel free to ask.
You are not asking questions. So you have to make a condensed PPT
Yes,
and
sir.
then we can make it a PDF and then we'll upload in the class material section so that they can study it. Okay,
I
so,
thought they will have some question. That's why I took 15 minutes for that.
yeah,
10-15 minutes for that.
anyway, what is the number of students today present? Can you see?
Yeah, I took a
23.
Oh, 23 out of 31, 23. Okay.
Sir, at 21 or 20, because you are also counted in.
Yeah,
20.
yeah, 20. So 21. Yeah, you are right. 21. So 2/3 present. Okay, Sulagna. So you can unshare the slide.
Okay.
And actually, these things to be demonstrated in the laboratory, that is very exciting. you see the color changes, you see the root how we extract. But such things, it's in our subject it is difficult to give the flavor in the this online class. And
Yes, sir.
so hopefully if when you people will be coming back, then sometime we can have one session in a condensed mode, and then we can show you all the things. Okay.
Actually, we are expecting that at least lab classes should be done offline, sir.
Yeah, right. No. Yeah. That's the unfortunate part of the situation. So that is not in our hand. Yeah. So let us hope situation will improve. And if you people will be called back, say in early next year, then sometime we'll meet, and then if you are interested, we'll show you these experiments in a condensed mode so that you will realize how things are made. Okay, so for now only you have to just study what she discussed, and we will share the slides, and see you then in the next week. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sulagna.
Yes, sir.